Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Core Behavior Solutions YouTube channel. Today what I want us to do is I want us to look a little bit at reinforcement and hopefully get a better understanding of how reinforcement works and why using reinforcement can be beneficial both in your home or in your classroom, wherever you're choosing to use it. As parents, a lot of times our go-to is, okay, we're gonna punish. We see a behavior, we wanna punish that behavior. Or people will ask me, hey, what's the best punishment for this behavior? It's really our go-to strategy that we use at home. A lot of times when we think about reinforcement, we think that just means, okay, I'm gonna give something good to my child. So I'm going to give, something what I think is good or what I think is positive or something I might like, I'll give to my child, or I might say something nice to them. But really, reinforcement is anything that increases the likelihood that a behavior is going to occur, or it just increases the behavior. If a behavior is increasing, then the behavior is being reinforced. So a lot of times people will say, hey, Michelle, this behavior keeps happening over and over. I've tried everything I can, but the behavior keeps getting worse. What that tells me when we're looking strictly at behavior is something that you are doing or some outside factor, something is reinforcing the behavior, because the only way that a behavior increases is if it is being reinforced. So let's think about some examples. Let's say that I give my kids $1 every time they make their beds without me having to say anything to them. So if they wake up in the morning, they make their bed, if I don't have to say anything, I'm going to give them $1. And what I noticed is over the next couple of weeks, they start to wake up, make their beds on their own, and I'm not having to say anything to them. I know that my $1 is reinforcing their behavior. Now, let's think about my 2-year-old. Let's say I have a 2-year-old and I give her peaches at dinner time, and when I put the peaches in front of her, she immediately starts screaming. So I go over there, I don't want to listen to it, I take the plate away, I take the plate of peaches away, and she eats the rest of her food. The next night, same thing happens. I give her a fruit. She starts screaming. I take the food away. This pattern continues and her screaming continues to increase. In that case, me taking the food away is also a reinforcer because it's causing the behavior of screaming to increase. So that's just kind of 2 examples to show you where giving something or taking something away both cause the behavior to increase, so both are considered a reinforcer. And a lot of times I think we don't think about it that way. We just think, oh, a reinforcer is I'm going to give you something that you like. But that gives us 2 examples to show that sometimes it is also taking something away can serve as a reinforcer. So anytime that you see a behavior, that can be a good behavior, a bad behavior, a desired behavior, an undesired behavior, appropriate, inappropriate, whatever you want to call it, is increasing, you have to ask yourself, what could be reinforcing the behavior? Once you can determine or identify what that reinforcer is, then you can start to increase or try to increase and reinforce the appropriate replacement behaviors. So why is it important to reinforce positive or appropriate replacement behaviors? Anytime you try to decrease a behavior, a new behavior is going to replace that behavior that you're trying to decrease. So think about when your kids were little. I can remember always saying when my kids were young, oh, it's just a phase, they'll outgrow it, which is true. It is just a phase and they will outgrow it. But the reason it's a phase is because they learned a new behavior and that new behavior replaced that old behavior. So, you go through a phase where they're sitting in their high chair and they're throwing food on the floor, and then they no longer do that. Then they're, smishing the food all over their face or whatever it is. And they just kind of gradually have these new behaviors or these new phases that come up that we're starting to see. So let's say, for example, I'm a nail biter. So I bite my nails and I decide, okay, I don't want to bite my nails anymore. So I'm going to paint my fingernails in hopes that I don't bite my nails anymore. Well, then instead of biting my nails, I might go to scratching at the nail polish, or I might chew on the end of my hair. There's always some replacement behavior that is going to take the place of whatever that behavior is that you're trying to get rid of. As a teacher or as a parent, I want to make sure that those new behaviors, those replacement behaviors, are positive behaviors, they're desired behaviors, they're socially appropriate behaviors. Otherwise, it's going to be like the game at Chuck E. Cheese, where the whack-a-mole game, where one thing pops up and I'm smashing it down, and then something random pops up and I don't know what it is and I'm smashing that down, and it just turns into this game of, okay, let's chase the behavior. What we want to do is we want to be in control of those behaviors that we are trying to teach. So we don't want it to be a random behavior that pops up. We want to say, okay, we want to get rid of this behavior, but here's this behavior that I want to teach you. And I want to be in control of that behavior because I want it to be positive, desired, and socially appropriate. We want to teach our kids what's okay, what's expected, what it is we want them to do. We need to use reinforcement. If we're just using punishment, we're only teaching them what we don't want them to do, what's not expected. We're only teaching the no's rather than the yes. For example, let's say that your son gets in trouble at school for throwing rocks at the girls during recess. So he throws rocks at the girls in recess, you get a note from the teacher, he comes home, and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm taking away your video games, and you can't play video games because you threw rocks at the girls at recess. So now, because of the punishment you chose, your son knows not to throw rocks at the girls at recess. That leaves about 7,500 things on the table for a little boy of what is okay to do at recess that is not throwing rocks at the girls. But if I flip that, if I were to use reinforcement, then I'm going to teach him what to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip that and I'm going to say, okay, it's my little boy. Hey, every time I see you engaging in something that's appropriate, expected, that's, socially appropriate, that's desired, positive, whatever that behavior is, towards another girl, I'm going to let you earn 1 minute on your video game. So maybe I see him get out of the car and wave at somebody. Maybe he waves at a little girl that he doesn't like. That's 1 minute. Now I'm going to see that he holds the door for another little girl. That's another minute. And every time I see different behaviors, I'm going to keep giving him 1 minute. So now he knows, okay, these are all those behaviors that are expected. These are those positive behaviors that mom, dad, grandmother, whoever it is, the teacher wants me to do, because we are telling him, we are reinforcing every time he engages in those appropriate behaviors. That's the example of how reinforcement works over punishment. So using reinforcement gives me the opportunity to teach all those appropriate replacement behaviors and not just tell my child that one thing that I don't want them to do. Now, does this mean that we never use punishment? No. Now remember, if reinforcement increases behaviors, punishment is going to be something that decreases behavior. And there are times that you need to decrease behavior, and there's times you need to decrease behavior quickly. So one example might be safety. If you have a child that plays in electrical outlets or runs in the street or gets too close to water when they're not a swimmer, those are things that you would use punishment for. So I'm not saying that punishment is never an option, but I do think that using reinforcement when possible is going to decrease, it's going to decrease your stress level, your child's stress level, it's going to decrease conflict, and it's teaching your child what to do. And the goal with reinforcement is that we can teach them what they need to do so that we can see an increase in those behaviors, which is naturally going to decrease the behaviors that we do not want to see. So as you go about your week, try to think of ways that you can use reinforcement in your home or in your classroom by teaching your kids what it is you want them to do and reinforcing instances of those.